All right, we are live with Officer Robby Raines here to talk about Dogman, paranormal, and other cryptids. Did I leave something out? No UFOs this time, unless you're into them. I mean, if you're
Well,
into UFOs, then we'll talk about it.
I'm more interested in the Bigfoot and Dogman. I mean, I'm not opposed to the UFO thing. That's just not
Yeah.
been. That's not my. That doesn't really appeal to me as much as the other.
Let me tell you where I stand on like UFOs is like I'm almost 100% sure that there's life out there, so it's almost superficial to talk about them. Like it just depends on what level of life is out there at this point.
Yeah, and like I said, that's why I say I don't discredit it or I guess would be the better. Just got me into this, and it's not what interests me. I mean, they're split like that. Everybody's got to have their own niche, I guess.
Yeah. That's what I'm going to do with this show. I'm going to take it. I'm going to call it the Caffeinated Cryptid because I noticed all I ever do is want to talk about Bigfoot and drink coffee for like hours at a time. So I think I invented my own niche by default.
Yeah.
Now, DA, you're his co-host, aren't you? Over there on DX Machina.
Yeah, one of them. Yeah.
He's the Dogman guru over there.
He knows a lot about all the stuff we talk about though. But DA is really diligent in his research and which he's got to be to write his books and stuff. I mean, anybody that reads his books, it don't take long to know that he really sits down and does his homework and does his research and his due diligence.
Yeah, the DA verse.
And that I don't know how many times I've said that to him. It's just it amazes me that every one of those series are connected in some way, shape, fashion, or form, and keeping all that stuff straight and how he does that, it goes beyond me. But he does it, and he's good at it.
You know what? Have you been paying attention? I know I just mentioned we're going to talk about UFOs, and here I go. But there's been a lot of people, at least 3 that come to mind lately, that have been popped for making up their own cinematic universe and just calling it their abduction story.
That one guy I've kind of heard a little bit about that.
Yeah,
nothing like nobody specific that I could think of, but I have heard people talking about stuff like that.
Yeah, there was that one guy. He did it, and he got like deposed in Congress because of it. He had the blue duck aliens. And I'm like, dude, if you wanted to be an author, just be an author. It's cool. I mean, we're not going to be like, you don't have to like be a charlatan in this field.
Yeah, just go out and write your book.
Yeah, and that's what kind of like DA. I'm not saying he's a charlatan or anything, but like he did just like, I'm going to be an author. This is what I want to do.
Yeah, that's something he's wanted to do his entire life. He's we've had plenty of heart-to-heart conversations about that, and he said that he knew from a young age that that's what he wanted to do. He always enjoyed reading, and so he just that's just the way he's framed himself, and he's used a lot of, I would say probably about 90% of the characters in his book are based on people that he knows or has known in his career.
Did you make it in the book?
Oh yeah, I'm in my character. Me personally shows up in this latest Wild Hunt, Death at the Atlaw Pass. Myself and Anthony. Doc's already, he's been in the books. Norm is in a few of the books. But Dark Frontiers, his newest book that he just wrote, all of those characters, the main characters, are based on all of us co-hosts, and that's going to tie in because, like I said, most of our characters are in the older / newer books, which are like present day timeline, which Dark Frontiers went back and kind of started is a prequel, kind of a retell, or not a retelling, but where everything started. So all of our ancestors are with the first group that became the first group of monster hunters or cryptid hunters.
Damn, really?
So that ties into the Wild Hunt and the Apex Predator and all that stuff. So how he keeps all that stuff going and keeps it relevant and keeps freshening it up.
You think there's a room in his house that just strings and pictures and post-it notes?
Oh, he uses 3 monitors at a time when he's and he takes. This is how detail oriented the man is.
Mm-hmm.
He has a book, and every time or a little piece of paper when he's writing, every time a character fires a shot that he writes, he makes a tick mark. That way he keeps up with how much ammunition that character is fired, so that way he knows, okay,
Really?
this guy's got to reload. Yeah, that's how attention to detail oriented he is.
That's the first time in cinematic history that's ever been done, I think. The Walking Dead don't do it.
Well, and that's one of the things that drew me to DA's writing in the first place.
Mm-hmm.
He is. I'm a gun guy, and hearing him describe these things, I'm like, hey, that's real. I've heard of that gun. Oh, I've heard of that now. I've heard of this, and the cop lingo and the military lingo and all that stuff. It was all real. It wasn't somebody that was just making stuff up. And it, to me, I don't know if everybody feels that way, but to me, for me to suspend my disbelief and really get into something, there has to be some element in it that I can latch onto and buy into. I mean, obviously, I know a lot of it's got to be, over the top and out there, action wise. But you got to have something to be able to latch onto, some little basis in reality to latch onto, and he does that with the way you can get behind the characters, you can get invested in the characters, you can believe in the characters, and it just that was what really drew me to his writing at first. And one email turned into 4 and turned into 20, and almost a year later, here I am, one of his co-hosts. So
you've read them then?
Oh yeah.
I'm over here looking at the DA verse, by the way. Sorry.
Yeah, I've read every book except for I haven't gotten into the Perdition's Flame series yet, but I've read everything else. All the Ragnarok Rising, all the Wild Hunt, all the Apex Predator, Man's Marauders, and like I said,
like you said, they all tie in.
Every single one of them ties in some way, shape, fashion, or form. Characters intermingle and intertwine. It's like I said, I don't know how he does it. I don't know how he keeps up with it.
Super genius. So were you into like the Dogman before you met him, or you just kind of?
Yeah. Well, one of our shows we did our top 3, and I picked a werewolf / Dogman as my number 2, even though it's technically my number 1 favorite cryptid / monster, however you want to look at it. I had to put Bigfoot at number 1 because I did I still have not had a Dogman sighting, which is what I want. It's what I'm looking for. We're gonna have some trips to LBL to hopefully remedy that. I know most people look at me like you're crazy. No. You don't do what I do for a living and then chase things around like this if you've got all your wires tied up.
Hey, LBL's got that big sighting. That's a holy grail.
Yeah.
Dogman.
So, and DA's actually, that's where he had one of his sightings was in the LBL. Him and Nick Valente.
Really?
Yep.
Nick slapped me on the wrist last week for not posting non-Dogman stuff to his group, and I feel bad. I feel like I owe him lunch or something. I was just spamming the shit out of these groups. He goes, hey, it's a Dogman group. And so this week when you came on, I put Dogman, put it right up front. It's Dogman. Don't hurt me.
Yeah. Nick knows his stuff when it comes to this. So that, if I had a question about something that really I needed to know something Dogman, if I couldn't get in touch with DA, Nick would be the one I'd go to. But yeah, to get back to your question, I kind of do our typical thing that we do. We always end up going down rabbit holes and off. Anyway, yes, I've always loved. Yeah, I've always loved. I've probably seen every, just about every cheesy werewolf and serious werewolf movie ever made. So yeah, that's always been a hot topic of interest for me, and the fact that something out there could be what a lot of that legend and myth and lore is based on, that's fascinating to me.
Have you seen the werewolf episode of Love, Death, and Robots?
Love, Death, and Robot. I don't know if I've ever seen. What is that?
Yeah, it's you know how Twilight Zone and Black Mirror are all like one-off stories,
Yeah.
kind of creepy. It's the same kind of show. Everything's CGI. There's an episode about werewolf soldiers in Afghanistan. It's only like 10 minutes long. They're real short. They're like SNL skit short, but they're so good.
Might have to look that up then.
Oh yeah, they call them dog soldiers. You'd like it. I think you would. Taliban turns into a werewolf. It's a whole thing.
So that's one of my favorite movies, Dog Soldiers.
Oh yeah.
That's, to me, that's one of the top 3 werewolf movies ever made.
I think it's where they got it. It's like the same kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
The show itself's pretty good too. What you know, Travis Taylor, Skinwalker, Skinwalker Ranch. You know who that is? He came on Rick and Bubba. I'm not sure what state you're in, if you know Rick and Bubba or not.
They're syndicated there now, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's them right here.
Yeah,
my autograph picture of Rick and Bubba. They're always here.
Yeah, I've heard of them, but they're just I haven't actually got to listen to them, but I know who they are. So
yeah, I think you'd like them. I got their bobbleheads, but they had Travis Taylor from Skinwalker. He comes on regularly because he's from Huntsville, where I'm at now, Huntsville, Alabama. And so he was on there talking about how this they'd be at Skinwalker and Dogman would just appear. And at least once or twice, he said, and I wanted to go back and watch it this afternoon so I could tell you this specifically what he said. But he said there was so much high strangeness out there that he saw 6 dogmen. Someone saw 6 dogmen playing poker and smoking a cigarette. I'm like, did he just say that? Like on Rick and Bubba's? And that's just the thing about Dogman. It's never anything normal like a Bigfoot sighting. It's never, you know, they flash and throw a rock at you. Dogman's always like abstract. That's the craziest thing about them.
Yeah, and we've talked about that too. You know, if you start breaking down Bigfoot sightings, you know, you'll have your people that say, "Oh man, it was awesome. It was, you know, I sat there and looked at it, and it looked at me, and we had our moment. It walked off, and then some people are like, you know, I feel like I'm lucky I got out of the woods, and some of them are like, man, you know, I'm not sure. It was this, it was that, but there's never a cute and cuddly dog man encounter. No. Always evil. I you know, brown pants moment. I had to, you know, all I wanted to do was get out of there. So I guess that's why a lot of people look at me crazy when I say I want to have one of those encounters. But, you know, I'm just one of those guys that I've always been the one that runs towards the danger instead of away from it. So, you know, that's, to me, that's just the ultimate run towards danger is see something like that and take off after it.
That's exactly what I was going to ask you about, because it's never been anything like a campsite. And I thought it was my dog and looked up and it's a dog man.
Yeah, and DA actually had a encounter. I don't know what it was, but he was out there by himself playing a predator call in LBL and heard something coming towards him, and it was like, maybe I need to get back to the car. Got in the car, took out. He's like, why did I do that by myself? And I'm like, I probably would have done the same thing. I just don't know. I've been smart enough to realize it like DA and got up and got in the car. I'd probably still been sitting there, but that's just, I don't tend to think about things like that till it's too late. I'm usually on the slow end of that stuff. I'll act before I think a lot of times.
Yeah, I mean, if statistics are anything, no one's ever been killed by a dog man that we know about.
Well,
but David Pilates,
the LBL account back in '82, that family was supposedly killed by a dog man.
I was thinking that was just a side. Yeah.
Now, and there's 2 bicyclists. A couple years later, early '90s, I think, they were riding through, cycling from. The states may be wrong, but let's say they were coming from Colorado to New York, or whatever. Whatever trip they were on, they were going through the LBL, and they were keeping up with. One of the guys was calling his sister on the cell phone to, you know, keep her updated on where they were at, and they were out in front of a storm. So he called her and says, "Hey, we got a bad storm following us. You know, there's no way, you know, we got to stop for the night. So there's no way we're going to be able to outrun it because we can't ride through the night. So we're coming up on this LBL. We're going to go in here and camp and we'll call you in the morning when we take off. She never heard from him again. So they go in, they start looking for him, and they find one of the guy's bikes wrapped around a tree about 20 feet off the ground. And the other bike was just demolished.
Ooh.
So, and it was in that same general area as the 80s incident. So
it's not like a tornado or anything. That was a...
No, it was no tornadoes. I mean, it was a thunderstorm, but ain't no thunderstorm going to pick a bicycle up and wrap it around a tree 20 feet in the air.
Not without being like a mile wide of devastation anyway.
And what's significant about that is because the body of the little girl in that other, I think it was the little girl. It was either the little girl or the dad. One of the bodies of the family that was killed was found about 15, 20 feet up in the tree. So there's some significance and some kind of the similarities of things like that. Same area. I mean, they were almost exact same general area where they were supposed to stop at as where that family was. And about that area is where DA had his encounters. So
he gave me a brief description of his, I believe, when he was on here.
Yep.
To go back and listen to it. What was that movie Primal Rage? Is that a Dogman?
I think that was a Gugway.
Yeah, is like another. I keep wanting to call it a Yowie, but it's not the same thing.
Different type of
the face
Bigfoot.
mask.
Yeah, different type of Bigfoot. We speculate it looks more like a mandrill. The baboon type ape.
The little monkey.
Yeah. But very, very aggressive, very high strung, I guess, for lack of a better term. But that's more or less what a Gugway is. Just something like that on steroids, I guess.
I've heard the ones that look more like people / Neanderthals are the more garden variety Bigfoot.
Now, see, that's when Anthony had his encounter. That's what he saw.
The Neanderthal
looked more like an Aboriginal or Native American type. What I saw looked purely like an animal. I mean, it looked like had the big conical head. What Patty looked like Patty Gimlin Bigfoot.
So what was your Bigfoot sighting? Now I forgot you'd mentioned you had one.
Yeah, well, sighting I've had one. I've had several other encounters. Matter of fact, Jessica Jones and I had one in Georgia a couple weeks ago.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
That's how you know Glenn Jackson's name.
Probably. I know I've heard that name.
She used to be on his team.
Yep.
Or vice versa.
Well, we were up in Georgia for the Georgia Bigfoot Conference, and we went up to a place where she does her and her team do a lot of investigation. And we'd already went up in the woods earlier that day to kind of just scout around. And after we went and did the meet and greet, she was like, "You want to go back up and see if we can get some kind of encounter, some kind of action, something like that?" I said, "Yeah, let's go." So we went back up there. And where we were at is kind of like the mountain road just kind of pulls around to the side and goes around, keeps going up around the mountain. But there's a little pull off that you can pull into, and there's a little grassy meadow up on top of a little hill. So we got out, we walked up the hill. We were sitting there, kind of being quiet at first. Crickets and tree frogs and everything were going off. They were getting louder and louder. So Jessica and I were talking. We had to get louder and louder as we were talking. We've probably been out there 20, 30 minutes. And these things are just, it was loud. I mean, loud. It was like standing in the middle of 100,000 crickets going off at once. I mean, and all of a sudden, like somebody cut a light switch off, everything just stopped. I mean, it went from like 130 decibel concert to nothing in a split second. And we both just stopped and looked at each other. And, hair on the back of my neck and arms started standing up. I'm like, there's something out here. If it was a bear, you'd have been hearing some grunts and some huffing. Didn't hear any of that. If it'd been a mountain lion, you probably still would have heard something. But I felt like something was, like she was facing me and I'm facing, looking at you. I felt like something was moving behind her. Well, she got the same feeling behind me, and all of a sudden she got, she's more in tune to to that vibration. I don't have that. I say mine's a situational awareness, but she felt like something was down below us around her car. So she's like, I think we need to get down to the car so we don't get cut off from the vehicle. I said, yeah, pretty good idea. So we walked back down the hill, and we stood there and talked for a little bit more. Well, she's got her back facing up the hill, and I'm looking up the hill while we're still talking. And as I'm looking up the hill, right about now, I don't know if it was right where we were standing or if it was a little ways on past it, because it was a kind of a cloudy night, but it was kind of splotchy clouds. You could still see a little bit of moonlight and starlight coming through, but there were still dark patches where you couldn't see anything. But as I was looking back up, I see this big shadow start walking across the top of the hill.
Woo.
I told her to turn around and look, and I think she caught like the very last bit of it. It clearly moved like a good distance across it, an area where I could see in between trees.
Yeah.
So yeah, that to me, that was probably one of the better experiences that I've ever had. And the whole time, after those crickets and stuff stopped, it never started back. The rest of the time we were there, they never started back.
They must have moved in for the night then.
Yeah,
right their territory.
Never felt like it was any kind of, I didn't feel like it was a territorial thing, like they were trying to run us out, or nothing ever got thrown at us. Never heard anything. I saw that movement, and we had the feeling that something was there. Like I said, they called it that situational awareness. You just get from doing the kind of stuff that I do. You learn to listen to your instincts.
Oh yeah, probably big with you. You probably exercise that muscle a lot.
So, but I never felt any kind of, malevolence or any kind of. Yeah. But it was definitely there.
Didn't get sick or get a headache or anything. Just
nah. My personal feeling on that. If you're talking about infrasound.
Yeah, infrasound. How do you get zapped?
What I think that is, because I was a defensive tactics instructor, and basically I've sat and listened to a lot of people describe what they went through, what they felt. I think it's a parasympathetic nervous reaction. When you are in a situation like that, and your body gets flooded with all those endorphins and all that adrenaline and that fight or flight, and then when everything is done and you're over it, and your body's coming down from that, exact same, nauseous, dizzy, lightheaded, because you've lost control your fine motor skills. So when all that stuff starts coming back, things start flooding back that you couldn't remember, because when you go into that fight or flight reactionary thing, everything focuses on what's going to keep you alive and what's going to make you survive. So you're not going to remember fine details about things. You're not going to, things are going to be hazy. So everything that people have just, and I'm not saying it's not, this is just my personal opinion. And I think that's what it is. It's, it's because everything that they describe is what a parasympathetic reflex is when you're in a situation like that, because that's an intense situation. If you're standing out in the woods and you're not somebody who has ever believed in Bigfoot or the Dogman or something like that, and suddenly one of them things steps out behind a tree,
then there he is.
That's a paradigm shift, and that's going to put you in one of those. It's shell shock. It's
I know what you mean.
PTSD, whatever you want to call it. I mean, that's what it is. Now, I know infrasound is a real thing because, lions and tigers and things like that have it. I just don't think that's what's causing people to have these reactions. I think that's what it is. I think it's their body coming down from that fight or flight syndrome.
That'd be a good description. It's kind of like when you have a car wreck, you remember stuff about it for years later.
But right then and there, when things are going on, you can't think about that. Like, if you were the victim of a violent crime and I came up as a police officer to take your statement, 2 minutes after it happened, your statement's going to be different 2 minutes after it happened than 2 days after it happened. because you're not going to remember things 2 minutes after it happened versus the same way that you're going to remember it 2 days later, because your body's not allowing you to see that kind of stuff, because your body wants you to survive, and it's only going to give you what you need to survive at that particular point. So once you've had time to sleep on it about 48 hours, stuff's going to have come back, and it's the same thing with my encounter from when I was a kid. Because my dad told me that he was a police officer at the time. He told me the story didn't change, but the stuff that I told him the day of versus when he sat me down a couple of days later was a lot more vivid, and there was a lot more detail to it. And that's because at that time I was so scared that I only hit the high points at that point, because I was so scared of what was going on. You're 8 years old, and you stand up and you look out the screen door and you see, a 11 and a half, 12 foot tall Bigfoot standing looking in the door like that. That tends to upset you when you're that age.
That's traumatizing. That's traumatizing for sure.
So, I think that's a lot of what these people are experiencing. And, DA and I have talked about this, extensively, and Anthony, and they both feel the same way. I mean, I think it's just, our bodies can do a lot of things that we don't think it can. I mean, that's just like, the special forces, all these special forces units, when they've all got either their hell weeks or their green hells, or, all these things that they have designed to push your body past where you think the limit is. Because where you think the limit is and where the limit actually is two different things. You just have to be pushed past it. Same thing when you get in that stressful situation and you get, it's just like Doc was telling a story the other day about a guy that he knows. He's taught in one of the classes he teaches. Guy got shot 5 times in the pelvis, and was still in the fight. Still got in the car and drove himself to the doctor after he was shot in the pelvic area 5 times. Stuff like that's not supposed to be possible. But adrenaline and sheer willpower will do a lot more than what people think it will. That's how, how mothers lift cars up off their kids.
Yeah.
Things like that. We're capable of doing so much more than what we, in everyday terms, think we can do. But there's a price for that too. So when you get into that situation, you can do something like that. Your body's going to have to pay for it at some point.
Have that adrenaline dump where people just freak out.
And that's what that is. I mean, you in a situation like that, you see something like that, then everything's done, everything's taken care of. You back in camp, or you're sitting in the police station, and all that adrenaline that's in your body's got to be gotten rid of. It's like coming down.
That's such a weird phenomenon.
Yeah,
it's so weird.
So that's, like I said, that's my personal opinion. And had I not been a defensive tactics instructor and heard all that stuff and learned all that stuff, and like, that sounds exactly like what we learned the body goes through after, a critical incident is what we call it. That sounds a lot like that. So I started looking into it a little bit more. Me and Anthony got talking about it. And I said, this is exactly what this sounds like. I even got some of my old books out from my DT instructor class, started reading that stuff. And I read some of it to DA and Anthony, and they were like, yeah, that's exactly what this is. So,
especially if you don't think about that being what's happening at the time, it is traumatizing.
Yeah, but there again, if you don't know about that stuff or what that stuff is, or what that stuff called, I mean, you're looking for your mind is looking for an answer, and you hear somebody say, "Oh, it's infrasound. It causes this," and then all, it makes sense. And there again, like I said, I'm not saying that infrasound is not what's causing it. Could be. I'll never say that what I'm saying is right. I'll say
it could be a little bit of both,
and it may be.
Yeah.
It's like I went to an ASP instructor's class of the straight baton, and they're like, "Look, there's not one way to apply handcuffs. Our way is not the way; it's a way." That's the same thing. My my definition or my opinion or my explanation is not the only one. It's just what I think and what I feel and how the thing that I have come to that, or the conclusion that I've come to based on what I've heard. And
now,
I feel like it all
Yeah.
makes sense and all.
Yeah, that's Occam's razor. What you just said was probably describes it. It's probably a majority of it.
Yeah, and that's what all of us we go by that all the time is Occam's razor. Whatever.
Oh yeah.
Whatever makes is where the evidence takes us. You know, just like tracking. You know, I know you've heard people talk about the portals and things like that. Now, am I saying the portals can't happen? No, we know CERN has opened the portal, so that's not up for debate that portals are not a real thing. I get that. But do I believe Bigfoot uses portals? No, because if Bigfoot could use portals, we wouldn't still be sitting here on top of the food chain. If that was the case, think about that. If these creatures that wanted to take us out and could portal, would mean you be sitting here talking right now? A big hairy arm be reaching through a portal, jerking us back through a portal, taking us where they want to go.
Yeah, unless they think that we can somehow master it quick as we see it, then no.
Exactly. So
I love the idea of the paranormal Bigfoot, by the way, but anything's on the table at this point.
And there again, this is not me saying that's a stupid idea or that's idea. This is me saying I don't believe this and this is why.
Yeah.
I'm a tracker. I'm a trained tracker. I've been through tracking school. I know how to backtrack. I was shown how to backtrack, and I know what backtracking looks like. So if you're somebody, or if you're something, some pretty smart primate out in the wild, and you don't want the stupid hairless monkey carrying the boomstick around to find you, they've got adaptive camouflage. They know. I mean, all you got to do is look to nature for anything that I'm about to say. Grizzly bears backtrack. That's proven. You can find countless stories online of hunters who were tracking a grizzly, and all of a sudden, next thing I know, the grizzly's behind them, tracking them. Rabbits will backtrack when they're being hunted by packs of dogs. They'll start backtracking and get those dogs running in such a tight circle that the rabbit will take off while the dogs are still running around in a circle. That's documented. Adaptive camouflage. Polar bears have it. I can show you a video, buddy of mine that's on our team, that 50 to 60 I think it's doll sheep, or it may be bighorn sheep, something like that. You look at it and it's just a nice rocky mountain scene. All of a sudden 50 to 70 of these things just materialize, almost, quote unquote materialize. It's because they were laying there in plain sight as with adaptive camouflage. All this stuff already exists in nature. So why is it such a leap to think that something that is born in nature has a natural ghillie suit already made?
Oh yeah.
I mean, think they're special forces snipers who can disappear like that. So why is it so hard to believe that these things can do that? And if the adaptive camouflage is true, that would be why, if they can bend light through those clear hair follicles, just like a polar bear, that would explain a lot of these fuzzy pictures. Why the pictures are fuzzy and kind of because of the way the light shines off their hair.
The mandula.
So, yeah. I mean, and Doug Hychek got, I don't know how many hair samples of clear hair follicles. When they went to Snell Grove Lake, all those hair samples that they got over there were had clear hair follicles on them. The shaft is clear, and that's proven in nature. That's what a polar bear has. Polar bears' hairs aren't white.
They're clear. Yeah,
they're clear and their skin is not white, even though it looks white through that fur. It's black. So if you shave a polar bear, it's black. It's that color right there.
I wish they would do that more often. It'd be hilarious. Black polar bear. I remember DA getting this. We talked about this with DA. I was like, that's right. He was the mandula debate we had for like an hour and a half.
Yeah. And like I said, there again, I know there's people out there who think we're all full of you know what, but that's fine. Everybody can have their own opinion. And, I have seen somebody run a set of tracks out and then all of a sudden those tracks just stop. They're gone.
Mm-hmm.
There's no more tracks. But that person knows how to backtrack, and they showed us your primary point of impact is going to be different. There's 1,000 things that you can look at in that track, or that you need to look at in that track to tell if something is backtracked. So let's say, like I said, back to my example, you're the pretty smart primate that don't want the dumb hairless monkey with the boomstick to find you. You walk between these boulders. You walk out about 20 feet past them. You backtrack yourself back. You jump up on that boulder, and you take off through the trees about 20 yards down. Then you drop down, and off you go. That's not beyond the realm of possibility to think that that's what could be happening.
That does make like we said, most logical explanation.
Yeah, I mean, Occam's razor. What is there any other animal that we know in the animal kingdom that uses portals and portals in and out of things?
Not that we know of.
No, not that we know
Maybe
of.
Dogman, we don't know.
Maybe, but there again, we can observe everything else that I've said that makes sense on how these things move around, and if you overlay the missing 411, Bigfoot sightings, and known cave locations in the United States, they're pretty close.
I was just about to ask if you were the cave system guy.
Yeah, I think
that's pretty cool how they overlap, almost like lamination, like maps.
Yeah, me, DA, and Noah actually sat down one night after a show and pretty much hammered this theory that we've got out, and so that leads into the tree knocks. I don't believe Bigfoot's walking around in the woods with a Louisville slugger or a big piece of wood. I believe this is a form of echolocation.
Now we're getting into something.
I watched a show where a blind man set up, or they had a course set up on him for him to ride on his bicycle. They set up an obstacle course, and that guy went through that course clicking his tongue and didn't hit anything because he's taught himself how to echolocate. That is proven that humans can learn to echolocate. So if we can learn to do it, why can we think they couldn't?
They've probably been doing it for millennia too.
Exactly. Now you think about down in a big, huge cave, something the size of a Bigfoot clicking its tongue. How much of an echo is that going to shoot out?
Oh, so you think tree knocks are like coming from below the ground?
No, I think that's what they use. Period. I think if you're hearing that, you're not hearing them hitting a tree. You're hearing them clicking their tongue for either echolocation or for, just for identification. Hey, I'm over here.
That's the best theory on that I've ever heard, to be honest. It makes more sense than that's their way of warning each other.
Yeah. Makes a lot more sense than picking up if they're carrying a stick or they're picking up a piece of wood, finding just the right piece of wood. I mean, you ever try to find a piece of wood to knock back? We don't do that because I don't know what that message that's sending.
Yeah.
But if you ever tried to find the right piece of wood to hit that either it doesn't break?
I've thought about that because you almost have to find like the Louisville slugger.
Yeah.
Like, and it has to be that big around. I thought it has to be that big around. It has to be not dead. And you have to detach it from whatever it's attached to.
And how easy is that to do, especially at night in the woods? It's not real easy.
You have to twist it off and break it perfectly and get the limbs off. I wonder if they hit it like when if they make it with contact, maybe they hit it with their Masonic ring or something. Shit.
Yeah.
So, it has to be a Louisville slugger size almost to make that noise.
That's kind of the rabbit hole, so to speak, that we're all going down, or that's the theory that we're slowly building.
That's a cool one. I'll tell you that. Here's that cave system, by the way. You've seen it. I was just showing up there for anybody that I know you've seen this picture. I pulled it up every time I have a Bigfoot person. It's just astonishing. It's shot for shot, especially in the Appalachians over here where I'm at. I guess you're at too.
Yeah, I'm in South Carolina, so yeah, the Appalachians are, you know,
We are not far.
Table Rock Mountains where it starts for my area. Is the start of the Appalachian Trail.
We're not far at all. I mean, we go to the Smokies all the time because we're Caucasian. That's our annual pilgrimage. You have to go to Gatlinburg to visit the Temple of the Pancake.
Hey,
It's got a Buc-ee's up. They just got a Buc-ee's up there too. God knows how many people's there.
Yes, I drove by one of those. I think North Carolina. They've got them in North Carolina now. On my way to see my son this weekend, I went to DC. He's stationed up there right now.
Yeah.
And
went to the soccer stadium. I saw
yep.
that. We just got one here. I go about once a month. They're where it's at. Buc-ee's is the holy grail. And speaking of the Appalachians, our dumb question is that it's full of Bigfoot sightings, isn't it?
Yo, they're all over the place up there.
Wendigo and Bigfoot, and I don't know about the Wendigo, but I don't know if that's not something that came from Scotland. I don't know about those.
There's a lot of Wendigo stuff up around Minnesota and areas like that where it's a lot colder because there's a lot of. But if you start getting into some of the Cherokee myths and legends, you can kind of see some of that stuff that kind of leans in that direction. You know, the Wampus Cat's actually a Cherokee legend. Spearfinger's a Cherokee legend. What's the Cherokee Devil? And DA's gonna kill me for not remembering it, but the big stone that's up there, we had a show on it. But anyway,
the Wampus Cat.
Yep, that's when you see a lot of those, and if you look at it, every First Nation tribe has some type of legend about a Bigfoot. You know,
100%.
What's another famous one? Not Spearfinger.
Hairy Man, Alaska.
Hairy Man in Alaska. The Otter Man. The Cherokee Devil. Just pretty much every First Nation tribe has some type of legend about Bigfoot. But when you go back to the Wendigo, that's not one that's like in every First Nation culture. Just like Skinwalker, that's not in every culture of a First Nation tribe. That's only in a few.
Yeah.
So I think the Wendigo is more of a spirit than a creature. And the Wendigo is one of those that, like, there's certain things that you have to do to be a Skinwalker. You have to, you have to do something. You have to walk that path. But as far as
that's Wendigo, right, because people turn into Skinwalkers. Okay.
Yeah, but as far as a Wendigo, I think that is something that can be conjured, or if situation gets really bad. Williams Nighthawk's the one to really get into that stuff. He's the one that knows more about that stuff than I do. I know, I'm part Cherokee, but I claim to know nothing about that compared to William. William is the guy, he knows that stuff. But if I'm thinking right, I know for a fact that, because I've heard him say that, as far as the Skinwalker, you have to go down that path, and you have to commit an unspeakable atrocity to do that. I mean, it has to be bad. Like if you listen to the show we did on the Oklahoma Girl Scout murders on DAX Machina, that's a Skinwalker story. That's one that'll really.
Yeah, that Skinwalker's a blood in kind of thing, isn't it? That's pretty. It's pretty rough. I heard that the Wendigo didn't get its deer head until the 1700s or something. You know how it has a deer head now?
If you really start looking into the Wendigo, there are many different variations, iterations, versions of it, and I think a lot of it depends on where you're at. As to the one with the deer head, I think that's probably the most widely known version. When you say Wendigo, that's what most people picture is the emaciated deer head,
jaw hanging down.
Yeah, but that's not. It's kind of like Hollywood getting in and calling a movie or naming a movie Skinwalkers and it being about werewolves. Yeah, a Skinwalker is not necessarily a werewolf. Now, could it take that shape? Yeah, but a Skinwalker is, is not a werewolf. But you get Hollywood getting in there and getting involved, and they have a movie called Skinwalkers that's about werewolves. So, I think a lot of it's just based on where you're standing at any point in the country as to what you're going to hear, what you're not going to hear. But I think that is the most common conjuring of what a Wendigo looks like is the deer head, or the deer skull rather, the emaciated body, big long spindly legs, almost kind of like a giraffe in a way. Or the body.
You ever seen that movie The Ritual about that?
Yes.
God, that's what I think of every time I think of it. How just long,
and
gangly.
And I think that's what everybody, when you say that term, that's what's in everybody's mind when you hear Wendigo is that, because that's what Hollywood has put forth, is that. And if you do a search on Google, that's probably the first 12 pictures are probably going to look like that. Just probably a lot like that right there.
Mm-hmm. I always get confused with that picture of the rake, that white thing that's in that game camera hoax.
Yep. Well, and we talked about that on that show about Wendigo. That because a rake is more like I think that's more like an angry spirit, if I'm thinking right, which can happen anywhere. Whereas the Wendigo has more of certain things that have to happen before it can manifest.
Which one's the ones that whistle at you in the woods? Those are my favorite. Whistle at you and say your name.
I think that's Wendigo, because one of the things about the Wendigo is that it can mimic people. So it's like, don't answer them. Now, and William will tell you don't whistle in the woods, but a lot of that's got to do with Bigfoot, because it's supposed to send the wrong message.
There's like a whole side of TikTok dedicated to don't whistle in the woods after dark.
But I think some of that's in the Wendigo lore too. Sometimes you start really getting into all these cryptid myths and legends and things like that, and some of them start kind of blending together, and you can't really remember which, because
a lot of crossover, tons of it.
Well, if you look at the Tennessee Wildman, start reading up about the Tennessee Wildman, you'll hear a little thing right here that sounds like a skunk ape, or then you read something over here, it'll sound like a gugway, then something over here, it'll sound like Patty Gimlin version. Then you got one over here that kind of sounds like a Janoshqua. I mean, every story has got a little bit of something different in it. I think a lot of that is, people will have some type of encounter, and as they're telling their encounter, somebody's listening to it, and then somebody else may have an encounter with something different, and then it just all starts piling on, and before you know it, the Tennessee Wildman is a combination of about 12 different Bigfoot that...
Yeah.
And it could just be that's the intersection of a super highway that a lot of different species just happen to be around.
So they always pop out at one time. Good Lord.
Well, think about it. If they are truly subterranean or do a lot of their time is subterranean, that whole area, Tennessee, Missouri, where else? Arkansas, there's a lot of caves in those areas. So that could be
Oh yeah, definitely.
an intersection of a super highway just underground versus.
Well, there's a lot of stuff from Tennessee. Black Panthers, Tennessee Ghost Dog, Spearfinger. Oh, I forgot about Spearfinger.
Yeah,
You just mentioned
Spearfinger. That's Cherokee.
Flintville Monster. It's right up the road. Flintville Monster is about 20 minutes away from me.
Well, you're probably pretty. Well, how far are you from Have you heard of Werewolf Valley or Werewolf Springs in Tennessee?
I heard of it. I don't know where it's at. Google it.
Yeah, that we're thinking about having a little excursion up to that too.
Let me see, because I am just like just a couple notches away. Let me change one. A couple notches away from trying to get in on like a real ghost hunt with somebody, or not ghost, or any kind of hunt, not just ghost hunt. Werewolf Springs, Tennessee. You said?
Yep, it's in Tennessee.
Dickinson County.
Yes, Dixon County. That's it.
Let's see where this at. Tennessee's not very wide, so I'm like close to most things. And Tennessee's thin state. Dixon County, Tennessee. I had a lady on here from just across the line because I'm almost at the Tennessee line where I'm at. I'm like, if I'd have known you were this close, I might have tried to coordinate some kind of in person. The next time I will. Well, it's on the river, so it can't be too far away.
Yeah.
Oh, it's all by Nashville. Okay.
Look into that. That's actually a pretty interesting story. And then you got Werewolf Springs, then you got Mammoth Caves in Tennessee where there have been some Dogman sightings, and then LBL, which is kind of like what we were calling or referring to as the Dogman Triangle, which is not really. They're not in a triangle, but LBL in Missouri, Mammoth Caves in Kentucky, and then Werewolf Springs in Tennessee. That's a little three-pronged tour that we're gonna work on taking at some point.
And one of the guys I kayak with, every time there's a 3-day weekend, he's up at LBL.
That's kind of the bucket list place that we want to go.
1860s.
Yeah, it starts off with a circus train that crashed and some animals got loose. They recaptured most all the animals except for the wild man of Borneo exhibit.
Wow. Okay.
And
Wolfman of Borneo. Wow.
Yeah. Then all of a sudden, people started hearing and seeing things, and this guy and his servant, I believe it was, got attacked in the woods. They jumped off the wagon. Servant went one way. The owner went this way. Just split it up, and I think the servant got attacked and killed. And so a bunch of hunters from town got together, decided they were going to go out and try to kill it. And almost like what they did in the new Benicio del Toro remake of the Wolfman. They went out and staked the goat out.
I saw they tethered a goat.
Yeah, they tethered a goat, and the goat got killed, and about 2 or 3 of the hunters got killed. So they hired this big time hunter. He comes in, and I think it was just like one night he stayed, or maybe a couple nights. Anyway, he's in this cabin, or he gets back into this cabin with the thing's chasing him, and he shoots it a couple times, and it doesn't even phase it. And he said the only thing that saved him is the sun came up and it took off, or started coming back up, and it turned around and took off, and then nobody ever went hunting for it again. And then, surprisingly enough, not too long after that, that place was made into a state park.
How Teddy Roosevelt of them, huh?
Yep. Well, I mean, that was the topic of the show last night. I didn't get to be on it because I was in Washington, but that's a theory that I can definitely get behind. The DA's got.
I'm all over it. We got DA in the house.
What's up, boss man?
You summoned his ass. You said DA 3 times. There he popped up.
Yep.
Yeah, that will
he's
really
like the Candyman.
Oh yeah, that TR, the Teddy Roosevelt, what you're just talking about, that is will really get me juices flowing. Like all the places that are national parks, what they're at, what they look like.
Well, and I had never thought about that. I mean, I'd heard of it, but I'd never thought about it until DA said it, and he just listened to him explain it. I was like, wow, that really really made a lot of sense.
Yeah, it was after he had that encounter in the woods too, that he started doing all that. I'm often thinking what the ramifications would be if. Well, go ahead. I'll start that topic in a minute.
Yeah, well, I was just going to say, the DA says, I agree with it because I've taken I don't know how many statements. Same thing with him. He's taken 15 million statements too. You don't get that level of detail from somebody's statement. Just you don't. And like you said, he created the Ozark National Forest as a preserve. And why would you do that unless you had some type of knowledge of something that like the Ozark Howler?
Where was his encounter? That wasn't in Ozarks, was it?
No, he had all kinds of encounters, but that he created the Ozarks National Forest, and that's actually a running theory that he created that as a preserve for the howler, for the Ozarks howler. That's not the Bauman incident. That's just another one that happened to come up with Teddy Roosevelt's name attached to it.
That would make sense.
Yeah, I mean,
just knee-jerk reaction, make all this stuff preserved.
Think about it. When you get one president that gets that goes out of office and the next president comes in, what is usually the first thing that president coming in wants to do?
Yeah, negate it all.
They want to get rid of something that other president has done. That's something that's never been touched, never been talked about, never been
not even looked at.
Nobody has. And with especially the way things are now, there's 87 million acres of national forest. That don't even count state parks. That's just national forest. 87 million acres. Why is the government not going after some of that to kind of sell, especially the way things are now? The way they say that they need money. Ain't nobody touching that stuff. Why?
It's not mentioned by anybody.
Exactly.
It's not even a topic of like one of those issues they put up there to keep voters engaged.
Yeah. That is in my lifetime, I've never heard anybody say, well, we need to think about repealing some of this national forest laws that Teddy Roosevelt put in. It's about time that we start, using some of that land for. You don't hear that.
Or the desert.
There has to be
the chest ranges.
Has to be some reason, it's like I said, DA one night. I said that must be in the president's big book that he gets. Every new president gets. Says, here, read this. These are the things you cannot do.
Here's your agenda. The Bill Hicks that gets taken in that back room and showed the alternate angle of the Kennedy assassination.
Yeah.
And here's your agenda. Yeah, it was Montana where I knew it was Montana or Wyoming. Started attacking his cabin. Part of the secret society. Man, Teddy Roosevelt, he makes me so happy to think about. He saw some shit. He's got an elk named after him. A whole damn elk.
That was a tough individual.
He got shot
and kept
rolling.
Gave his speech after he got shot.
There used to be a picture because I work for the Army right now. Well, I always have, but up in the main area of my building, and it was the Buffalo Soldiers over on San Juan with Teddy Roosevelt, and took it down. I'm like, where did that picture go? So I put this sumbitch in my podcast. Here we go. No one touches the national parks. Look how hard the Parks Department made it on David Pilates when he tried to get a full list of the missing. Yeah, they stonewalled him pretty hard.
Stuff like that that's not coincidental stuff.
Nope.
You don't as much. Like I said, in today's day and age, when money grabbing and land schemes and things like this, and there's always this rush for this, that, and where the next dollar is going to come in, and all that stuff. The 87 million acres. What could they do with that? I mean, how much money could they? Because it's like DA says, if you look at the Mark Twain National Forest, it almost stretches the entire width of the country of untouched green. I mean, there's just so much. And what can you hide in those places?
Everything. Now, the second question, what I was going to say earlier, what is the benefit to keeping them secret? Like, why can't we know? That's because we know about polar bears, we know about platypus, we know about humpback whales, which is big. I mean, what is it about a Bigfoot that we can't know about? We know about silverbacks.
We kind of broached that question too. If let's say you're a camper, you like to take your wife and kids out in the forest, but if you knew that Bigfoot, Dogman, things like that were out, if that was 100%, I'm not talking about us that talk about it, that those of us who truly believe because we've either seen it or we just believe. I'm talking about the general populace that really this stuff like this just never even occurs to them. If all of a sudden you knew that was common knowledge, would you want to go do a lot of camping?
Yeah, probably not.
Probably not. And I may get the number wrong, but I'm wanting to say because we checked on this that night, and I want to say it's $30 billion a year that they make off national parks. DA, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that was the number.
How much is that? $30 billion?
It was a big number. I mean, it was something that we're like, that's probably why you don't. That's why you do the little soft opening type thing where you soft disclosure when you're walking through the woods and you see a little sign that says "Don't feed the Bigfoot."
Yeah.
Everybody
giggles a little bit.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that was the number. It was like $30 billion a year that the National Park Service makes. So I mean,
that doesn't hurt their cause.
No,
that's for sure. That doesn't hurt the reasoning.
Now, how much would that number be if it was a known fact that these creatures are out roaming around in the woods of these national parks? They wouldn't be making $30 billion, I guarantee you. And plus, they'd be having every redneck hunter in the world that they were out there. Because you're not supposed to carry in a national park. We know people do. But if that was a known fact, how many people would be out there trying to do something?
Yeah, and how many people would carry regardless? Because that would be just the
The
only reason I don't carry in national parks is because I have to fly there most of the time. And there has been gray minivans similar to the ones that I drive to national parks with a Glock in them near me, but never my gray minivan. Just saying the scenario has happened that I've heard of.
Well, my chief's taking care of that. He got us the IDs say we can carry anywhere, even in national parks. So I ain't got to worry about that part of it. But yeah, think about it though. I mean, if you're doing $30 billion a year, and there's a chance that something like that's going to cut into that, you might want.
Is that the only reason you thought about though?
I don't think that's the only reason, because I think there's things that they're doing out there that they don't want us. But they've got to pay for stuff like that somehow. They've got to get money coming in somehow. And if you got $30 billion coming in because of people going in and camping and getting permits to hike and do things like that or whatever, I mean, that's free money off the public.
What about forestry, like the logging industry?
Well, I mean, that's a cash cow for them too.
Yeah. Lionel said he was new Bigfoot somewhere. He'd camp there every weekend.
Yeah, I mean, and there are those of us who would, but the vast majority of people who go out and camp for recreation would probably stop doing it.
Yeah, I guarantee you wouldn't take your toddlers out there and do it.
Because then people be like, "Oh, all them stories we've heard of Bigfoot snatching kids, they have to be true." Or, yeah, like I said, I don't think that's the only reason, but I think that's a big reason.
30 billion is a pretty big reason. That's one Artemis rocket per year.
Mm-hmm.
Thought I had another comment here. It's just DA talking with us.
Yep.
Wish he wasn't so busy. It'd have been fun to have a panel with him on here.
Yeah, I think he's working on some book stuff tonight.
It's a good thing. He got to extend that DA verse. You got to let Kathleen Kennedy take it over and make the main character a woman. He'll make your character Ray.
We got some strong females in the group.
You want to talk about Star Wars? She made it.
Yep.
Made all the characters female. I'm still over here looking at this Tennessee map I was looking at earlier. Apparently, there's a kangaroo in Tennessee. The phantom kangaroo. What the hell? Teddy Roosevelt saw that. It's where'd it go? Oh, come on! A giant carnivorous kangaroo that killed and ate several police dogs in the Hamburg in 1934. What?
I didn't know kangaroos were carnivorous.
Oh, in Tennessee they are. The one thing more dangerous to kangaroo in Tennessee is the referees. That's the one thing. That's the only thing scary.
DA said he's gonna pass on Kathleen Kennedy.
You need to bring her in as a technical advisor. In Tennessee, they're on meth.
Yep.
The DA's in Missouri, isn't he?
Yeah.
And you're in South Carolina.
South Carolina. Doc's in Colorado. Steve's in Missouri, and Anthony's in Florida. We're all over the place.
You're a Clemson fan. Saw that.
Yep.
Let's see. Here's that's Michigan.
Yeah, there's some Dogman stuff goes on in Michigan. Michigan Dogman.
Yeah, the upper peninsulas eat up.
Mm-hmm. And of course you got Wisconsin with the Beast of Bray Road and Elkhorn, I think is the name of the county, or either Elk or Elkhorn. I think it's Elkhorn though.
Mm-hmm. I've stumbled upon a giant Etsy map of posters of all these things. It's like a treasure trove. I didn't know that Minnesota was so eat up with them until I started talking to the guy I had on here that time. It is insane. I think Minnesota may be the Bigfoot capital of the country. No one knows about it. If Portland and Washington didn't exist.
Yep, Elkhorn. That's right.
Beast of Land Between the Lakes. A werewolf containing the spirit of a Shawnee shaman killed a family of campers in the 1980s. I don't think I knew that they killed them. I thought it was just an attack.
No, it killed all four of them. And DA, I could remember earlier we was talking about that. Was it the little girl that was found up in the tree, or was it the father? I knew somebody was found up in the tree, about 20 feet up the tree, but I couldn't remember which person it was.
Elkton.
Elkhorn's where that's the county or the town where Beast of Bray Road. Bray Road runs through Elkhorn.
Yeah, the little girl, he said. I got to look into that more often. I just kind of skimmed it when I talked to DA the first time. Harry the Harrington Lake Monster. That sounds like a barbecue joint. A pig, a eel with the head of a pig.
Well, and that's where you got to really kind of start looking into, because there's one in North Carolina in Lake Norman that is called Normie. So if you start really looking into that and looking at people's descriptions, like people will see the back half of it, and the back half of it they'll describe looks like they'll see a flipper or something like that, or they'll see the middle of it, and the middle of it, the way they describe the scale pattern. So Norm and I actually got talking about that, and every description you can just about pick a different indigenous species in that lake that matches that, like the middle section that people were, when they would just see the middle of the body, they were describing a big alligator gar. The way the circuit
carp or a gar, yeah.
Yeah, there's actually alligator gar in Lake Norman, and then there's a certain salamander that's up there that when they were describing the head that they saw sounded more like there was only one sighting that we really couldn't debunk, where the diver got his fin bit off. Didn't hurt him, but it bit onto his swim fin and pulled it off.
That's a snapping turtle.
Could have been. I don't know that they ever found the fin to find out if there was any kind of. But some of these you just people start putting together. It's kind of like what I was talking about the Tennessee wild man, where everybody's kind of putting different sightings together and making one creature out of 4 or 5 different sightings.
Yeah, I can see how if you didn't know what it looked like when a carp or a gar started rolling.
Yeah,
they're at dark. How you would think it might be something. I about got kicked out of my kayak one time by one.
And both of those fish can get really big if they're left.
Oh, yeah, basically alligator gar. They're big as a truck.
Yep.
The gar around here are all just a long nose. I don't think we have alligator. Maybe a little bit of alligator. I bet towards South Alabama there is, but
oh yeah, I'm sure there probably is. Well, one of the biggest alligator gars that's ever been caught was caught in Texas. And I think that thing was like,
oh, they're monsters in Texas.
I want to say it was like 10 or 11 feet, and it was like 500-600 pounds. I mean, that's.
Can you imagine? Fish. Can you imagine just shooting out with a bow and all of a sudden, shit? Now I got to reel in a Honda Civic.
Yeah.
Into my 14-foot boat with a 10-horse. Lionel's asking DA, what's the best Bigfoot book? I write a column, The Bigfoot Files, and review crypto fiction. DA's going to say his Bigfoot book. Just pick a book.
Well, I can answer that for him, but DA don't have to do it for himself.
Okay. But DA's got a whole... Does DA ever write nonfiction, or is it just all his universe?
Right now, everything's nonfiction, but there's a few ideas we've been kind of kicking around that like a cookbook, and there's a few other ideas he's got that it's not my place to say. If he wants to say, he can.
So everything's fiction.
The cookbook is something we've talked about on the show, and everybody's still getting on us about that because we haven't got it done yet. But because some of us haven't got our recipes to DA yet, but not me. I've got my recipe to him. It's everybody else.
Was it barbecue?
I think there was some barbecue in there. I think Doc had a barbecue recipe, maybe.
I'll share the DA universe. I'm sure that if I know Lionel, like I think I know Lionel. Here we go. Lauren Coleman's Mysterious America. Dr. Meldrum's book. Man, who did all the art for him? This stuff looks, I'm not going to say it looks professional because it's obviously professional, but this stuff looks, for somebody that I know and have talked to, it looks really good. For anybody that would give me the time of day, it's up there.
Yep, DA's top notch.
Covers. The Lost Legion. Ooh, the merch shop. Exit through the gift shop. It's turned into just a big DA billboard. Oh, it's not working. There we go. I'm okay with it. If I can help somebody do something through my Sunday afternoon time killing sessions. So I really like that logo you got, the Wild Hunt. Makes me want to read it.
Yep, that's the first. I think. I can't remember if I think I read Wild Hunt first before I read Lakeview Man. But those were the first two that I read, was the Lakeview Man and Wild Hunt. I might have read the Lakeview Man first. I know that I've read Lakeview Man more than any other book. I've read it probably. DA laughed at me last time I said it. I think I probably read that book 25, maybe 30 times.
Really?
Yeah.
That's a lot of time. That's a lot of time to read a book.
Yeah. I'm telling you.
Has there ever been any like film producers come up about it? Like this stuff is just ripe for Netflix. Some of the stories I've read about these books.
Well, anybody knows anybody,
Yeah, I was
get in
gonna
touch
say.
with DA.
I keep
DA
wanting to.
Roberts,
Yeah, they've approached me.
DARoberts.com.
Yeah, here it is. DARoberts.net, DARoberts.com.
Yep.
It's like looks like somebody's family crest.
Yep.
He said he's easy to find.
That one right there is the Steve's Pub and Grub. That's the little hangout.
Tell you right now, I'd watch the DA movies right now if they were out on Netflix. Starring Pedro Pascal, of course.
I don't know if we've done shows like that. Where we've talked about who we thought should play the characters. I don't know that we've ever mentioned Pedro Pascal.
He would just play every character. I mean, that's what he'd do. He's like Nicolas Cage. He just in every movie. All right.
I'm trying to think. I can't think of anybody right off the top of my head that
I hear you. He said to make a good Declan.
Declan Kane. Maybe. He might. I didn't. Who did we decide on last time though, Da? I thought we had pretty much somebody that was great lockdown that we thought should be Declan. I think Pascal might make a good Logue.
Timothy Oliphant. I don't even know who Declan is, and I think Timothy Oliphant would be a good one.
Yes, it was. I was just about to say before we typed it. I think that's who we did say Timothy Oliphant for Declan Kane. But DA, yeah, for Logue, the one of the vampires, that definitely either Pedro Pascal or Nicolas Cage. Man, Cage it couldn't be Logue. Cage could be what was the old guy that was Logue's boss that he fought? I can see him playing him.
Where'd it go? Damn it! I closed the window.
There's we've had almost entire shows about just talking about who we thought would be good for the characters in the book. That's fun though. If you've read all the books, you know all the characters. It's fun to sit here and talk about what Hollywood character. Yes, that's it. Father Alexandru. That's Nicolas Cage all day long.
Okay.
The way and play him the way he played him or played his character in Vampire's Kiss.
I was going to say, I bet it's in my mind. I was envisioning that new vampire movie, Nicolas Cage like that.
Yeah, Renfield.
Yeah, the Renfield. I couldn't think of it.
Yeah, Renfield.
I'm not googling pictures of. Never mind. Where's Lionel? Lionel had another question. Oh, he just said he'd check them out. Well, cool. Yeah, I guess we can wrap it up. We've deep dove the DA universe enough.
Yeah.
And talked about Dogman. The best part about having a subject matter podcast about Dogman or Bigfoot is I don't feel as bad bringing up Dogman and Bigfoot in every podcast. Because I'll bring it up for no reason.
Sometimes we struggle to try to figure out what we're going to talk about, but a lot of times it's dance with what brung you.
Oh yeah. Don't ever. I like to, whenever I have a guest on here that's being really, really, what is the word? I don't want to say like a stick in the mud. You know, they don't want to talk about anything being woo-woo at all. And I'll just go straight to the far end of the woo-woo spectrum and see what happens. And it usually brings them right back out. because they're trying to be professional. I'm like, you're on my podcast. You're not professional. Your career is pretty much over.
And Jessica and I've had this conversation. I've been on her show a good bit, and she's on that spectrum. But I don't care what anybody believes. Anybody can believe what they want to believe.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't change my perspective, and it doesn't hurt my feelings if somebody says, "Well, you're wrong." Okay, cool.
Okay. Like, thanks, bro. Or the expert.
I mean, exactly. There are no experts in this field. DA says it all the time. If anybody tells you they're an expert, they're selling you snake oil.
Yep.
They're a liar, because there are no experts in this field. It's all theory and conjecture. What I said tonight is strictly my opinion. Now, most everybody on our group, all our co-hosts, we all tend to think and feel the same way. But we're like-minded. And that's why we have the cohesion and the group chemistry that we have, is because we all think pretty much the same way. And we all have the same feelings. But we never say that we're 100% right. That's just how we feel. We feel flesh and blood animal. And as you heard tonight, we have some pretty sound theories to back up the adaptive camouflage, the backtracking, wood knocks, all that kind of stuff, the subterranean, but that's part of it. You can have those debates, and you can still get along just because you don't have the same opinion about it. And there's a lot of people that have lost sight of that and think, it's my way or the highway. No, that's not it. Because until there's somebody who has studied these things up close and personal in the wild for 20 years and can sit there and put the book down, the video, and all this, oh, here it is. This is definitive. Until that happens, everything that we're all saying is all, he said.
I do think that you what you were talking about earlier was the best explanation I've heard for the flesh and blood. Usually it's a monkey and don't argue with me ever. Yeah. That actually had reasons.
And that's the whole point of the other, the other side of the coin. Well, why? Well, because I said so. Yeah. Because I've seen them go through portal. Okay, well, if you have, then great. I personally have not seen anything that leads me to believe it's anything other than just a flesh and blood animal. But does that mean that I'm an expert or I'm the authority on it? No, that just means that my experience and what I have experienced, I've never experienced orbs or UFOs or anything like that. That doesn't mean I think that somebody who has is wrong. I have not experienced that.
The way you become an expert in the Bigfoot field, you need a camo hat or a real small cowboy hat. You got to have an angry face. That's your Bigfoot expert. Make a mean face, the camo hat expert.
I got all that, but I'm not an expert, so
I'm just joking. I had somebody tell me that my podcast was too small to be on, and I had to buy a book for them to be on here. And I was like, I've just been kind of gunning for them ever since. And if I ever meet them, I'll probably just be like, "Oh, hey, man," and pat them on the back. But it's just it's a motivation thing for me. Like, I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I just started.
Well,
I'll stop.
Everybody's got to start somewhere as far as podcasts go. So, there's another certain individual that DA knows what I'm talking about. If he's still on, that we were told that he wouldn't even talk to us unless we had 10,000 or more people on our show. Not okay,
bro.
It's not gonna hurt our feelings if you say no. Not why we're like, oh, he said no. Okay, we'll just move on to the next one.
Imagine. I mean, I've had those guys.
We've had MK Davis, Ron Moorhead, and Jeff Meldrum on the show. Those are some pretty credible guests on the show. So you don't want to be on the show? Fine.
I say the only person bigger might be David Paulides or Bob Gimlin himself.
Yeah, I mean, so it's not okay. You don't want to be on the show because it's below your standard. You're not hurting our feelings.
Imagine having a standard like that. No, man. See, I know everything about Bigfoot. Do you? something with zero evidence, you know all about.
Yep. But that's don't let idiots like that get you down. You just keep plugging and doing what you got to do.
Oh yeah, I thought it was funny.
Yeah, we do too.
And then I have guys who are like peers of these people come on and just be like, just this conversation we have here. And they're like, you should get him on. I'm like, maybe I don't. Maybe I won't. He might be friends with you because you have merchandise and go to the convention, but he doesn't want anything to do with me right now.
Yeah. And that's the thing is, this is a community, and a lot of people have lost sight of that. A lot of people think that, like, we have no problem plugging somebody else's show because it's not a competition.
Oh no.
Not even close. People can listen to multiple. I mean, if I'm on your show right now, but somebody you say Jessica had a show right now, I could turn my phone on and still be watching her show and giving her support while I'm on your show giving you support.
Yeah, or hit pause and come back.
Yeah, I mean, it's not a competition. We're all out here for the same purpose. We're all out here to talk about Bigfoot or Dogman or whatever the case may be. We're not out here, DAX Machina is not out here to put anybody out of business. Yeah, exactly. And that's our motto. We're only trying to be better than our last show. And that's
all you can do.
We're only in competition with ourselves. Okay, we've done this before. What can we do now? What's the next? We don't want to do this show because we just did a show like that unless we're going to do it bigger and better. And it's just a lot of people have lost sight of that. Now, friendly competition, there's nothing wrong with that, but it doesn't have to be competition to the point where, I hate that MFer. I'm gonna put him off there. That's the stuff that gets us. That we're just like, y'all have fun, leave us out of it.
That's the UFO bunch there. They get fights.
Oh yeah, but we just, we want our show to feel like it's just a group of friends sitting around a campfire telling stories and talking,
mm-hmm.
and that's the general. Not ambiance. That's not what I'm trying. But that's the general thing that we try to portray. That
mm-hmm.
Because we're not experts. We're just a bunch of rednecks, basically, a bunch of hillbillies, a bunch of country boys just sitting around, having a group discussion. I mean, and that's what we've always tried to portray, and not portray. That's even the wrong word because it's not like we're acting. I mean, that's just
no.
But that's what we try to get across to people. That's all we want it to be.
Not a bunch of Larry the Cable Guys.
Yeah,
throwing your voice.
Yeah,
that's funny. You said campfire. I tried mine to be the old country store, sitting around.
Well, and that's kind of why I did with my show. That's why I say welcome to the cabin, because it's the idea of us just sitting in a hunting cabin. Me and Johnny and Norm and Steve just sit around and talk like we're all hunting buddies, just sitting around in the cabin, talking about what happened in the woods that day.
Mm-hmm.
And the same thing on Ex Machina. It's like we're all sitting around a campfire telling stories. And when you're honest with people, and when you're doing things, it's almost like I've heard a lot of professional wrestlers say this: when the personas that they have that do the best are the ones that are them, but with just the volume turned all the way up.
Mm-hmm.
Because they're
Steve
like,
Austin.
Yeah, he's like that. He said, Steve Austin is me with the volume turned all the way up. It's kind of the same way with us. It's not with the volume necessarily turned up, but we're not acting. We're not being anything that we're not. It's us. And I think that's why people like us so much, because we're not afraid to say, oh, well, we don't believe that. That's not how we believe. This is how we believe. You believe what you want to believe, but that's not us. And I think people really like that honesty, and like that we're not screaming and yelling about these other shows saying stupid stuff, and I can't believe they said this. We're like, yeah, okay, if that's what they believe, then fine. But this is what we believe, and this is why. You know, just like I've told you tonight, man. We can back up. And when I say back up, I mean obviously still exactly. We're just you run into us in Walmart, it's the exact same thing that you're gonna get right here. But we feel like
Walmart out about Bigfoot. There's a Bigfoot.
Yeah.
People of Walmart.
We feel like we can competently back up all of our theories. And I feel
so.
like we can.
Like I said, that's some of the best theories I've heard about it so far.
Mean, makes sense. I mean, you know, is infrasound a real thing? Yeah. But if you really start looking into PNS backlash and things like that and adrenaline dumps and all that, everything that happens to people, almost word for word identical symptoms of a PNS backlash as these infrasound things. Okay, Occam's razor there again.
Yep.
You know, is Bigfoot walking around in the woods with a Louisville slugger? Probably not. But is it possible that it's picking up a stick and hitting a tree? Probably, or it could be. But how much more probable is it that it's this echolocation that we know is in the animal kingdom is there? I mean, when you start breaking these things down and start looking for a logical explanation instead of looking to something that's out of this world fantastical just because it is out of this world and fantastical, just for the sake of it being that way. You know, it's not. We want to look for the things that make sense, not for the things that are just so far out. The most outlandish explanation you could come across. You know, that's where that flesh and blood, show me where the evidence is going to take me mentality comes in. And, you know, yes, a lot of that has to do with our background and what we all did. And
it doesn't hurt anything, I'll tell you that.
No, it doesn't. And but you know, I've been a police officer for 26 and a half years. DA was a police officer for 20 years. He was in the military. Dot was in the military. Anthony was in the military. Steve was law enforcement as a first responder. You know, we're all just those practical, you know, show me the evidence type people. That's why we all get along. That's why we all have generally the same outlook on it. It's just how we are.
So is your theory on where the bodies are, the cave systems as well?
Oh, I believe there's a lot of the missing 411 that are in caves.
I mean, like the Bigfoot bodies, like.
Oh yeah, I think that too. I mean, because that goes back to the same thing of if you're
Mr. just ignore him. He didn't get out much. We'll put him away. I thought it was something good.
The same thing, you know, with the backtracking. If you're relatively intelligent and you don't want the dumb hairless monkeys finding you or finding your tribe mates, clan mates, whatever you want to call, that would be the best place that you could do is carry them in these subterranean caves, especially if that's where you're at most of the time anyway.
I really wish to explore more of those things. That'd be crazy.
And I think that's why you don't see them more than you. I mean, sightings are on the rise, yeah, but I think they spend a lot more time in the caves, and that's probably why you don't see as many of them as you see. You see ones out there, but you probably see scouts and maybe outcasts. Could be a possibility of why you only see loners. Is think about the lions in Africa. I mean, sometimes male lion gets kicked out of the pride to find a different pride, and you see them loners wandering around. Maybe that's why you
starve to death.
Maybe that's why when you see these single Bigfoot, that's why you see them, is because it was one that got kicked out of a clan.
That makes sense. Got the exiles out there. God, now I want to do some more cave research. It makes you wonder if what we know is the top of the cave. God knows what caverns are under there. be entire cities.
Yeah, I mean,
that's funny. Mr. Duffy trying to cause trouble here. Surprised you don't know him. He's got another Bigfoot channel. I don't know what it's about, but
I'm sure that's one of the ones that I've heard people talk about, but I don't pay attention.
Lord.
I mean,
sounds like a cult. Okay. All right. We'll go ahead and end this before Mr. Duffy makes everyone mad and ruins this great relationship we've had. I'm sure he's really upset. I appreciate it.
Everybody can have their own opinions. They don't hurt my feelings at all.
Imagine that. Crazy folks on YouTube. So what was do you have a show as well?
Yes. What's really out there?
What's really out there?
What I like to get DA laughing about and call it DAX Machina Light, because whereas we do like a 2.5, 3 hours on DAX Machina, what's really out there is usually only about 30, 45 minutes, maybe an hour, depending on what we're talking about. But that's me, Norm, Steve, and Johnny, and they're all here in this area. So, but
all right.
we're kind of just an offshoot of DAX Machina. But
I put his channel in my description. I just didn't have yours.
Yep. Well, we do like I said, we just usually have like one topic that we'll go over, and it's pre-recorded, so there's there's not as much drifting on and off because we've got one subject, and we try to stay on topic because we only usually do about 35 to 45 minutes. So
that's cool. It's like the after show.
Yeah, I mean, I guess you could kind of
plus or minus.
Yeah, the problem is, it's like I said, it's pre-recorded, and my daughter and her boyfriend do a lot of the technical stuff. Like my daughter does the little thumbnails, pictures, and her boyfriend does the editing. He records and does all the editing for us. So they don't charge me for any of that. So I don't fuss because it takes a long time sometimes to get. We're like 4 or 5 episodes behind right now, but I'm not paying him for it. He's doing it for free out of the goodness of his heart. So I can't really get upset that it takes a little while. So
editing, who edits?
Yeah. Well, we got another podcast that goes on in the studio right beside us. So a lot of times he has to edit out sound from.
Oh, you got one of those situations. Yeah.
Yeah. So
I understand.
When I
have children taking baths.
Yeah. Well, this is what I do here is at my house. What you see on DX Machina, this is at my house. Mm-hmm. But when we do what's really out there, we have another place that we all go that it's more centralized for all of us to get to, that we have all our equipment and everything set up. That, maybe one day we'll do a live show out of there. I don't know. We've kind of talked about it, but we've actually got a possible live investigation that we've got to do at a place in Newberry, I believe. But Steve, one of my guys, is going to be giving this guy a call tomorrow and talking to him.
Really?
Seeing if there's anything to it. And if there is, we may be having an investigation to go to.
When are you doing the werewolf spring ones?
We've talked about it, but we hadn't got anything set in stone yet because
Dixon, Tennessee.
Yeah, because the way we talked about it, and we want to do it what's easiest for everybody. So I think Werewolf Springs was closer to all of us. I can't remember how far that one was away from DA, but I think that we were talking. So there's a lot of logistic stuff we got to figure out because we're all gonna have to get up there and decide which one we're gonna go to first, and then decide the trip out. Because me and Anthony are coming from the East Coast, and Doc's coming from Colorado, and
that's a biggie.
Yeah, so it's we got to figure out everybody's got to be able to for it to be it's like 7 hours for DA. I think it's like 4 for me, and probably like 6 or so for Anthony. So, and I think Doc's probably would just fly in because he would work his out around a training class probably. But we have to, it's a logistical thing that we've got to. But we are working on some other things that may end up making a lot of that possible. So
yeah, if you do the werewolf thing, I may interject myself in somehow. I'm only an hour away.
Well,
I'm trying to get involved with some of the guys I've had on here.
Stay tuned. You may have something that you'll like then coming up. We've got some stuff, some other things in the works that hopefully is going to make stuff like this a lot more plausible. Because that's the biggest thing we got the biggest obstacle we have now of doing things is the space in between all of us.
Oh yeah, it's huge.
Anthony's like 8 hours away from me, and we're however far away from, like 13 hours away from DA, and probably DA and Doc are a little bit closer together than, obviously me and Anthony are closer together than those two are to us, but still it's
it's still spread out no matter how you split it.
Distance is the biggest thing that hurts us right now, and that's another thing that we're working on trying to figure out. So hopefully if things work out, that won't be a big issue one way or the other. Nice.
All right. So Doc's 9 hours from. Damn, this is just like whole day trips.
And I think he's like the other direction from DA than from me. So
yeah,
that would mean he's probably like 18
like
16
hours or 20.
Me.
Yeah. I can't imagine South Carolina to Colorado.
Yeah.
That's
South Carolina to DC was enough for me.
Yeah. I've been to DC from here on a bus. That's 2 days.
It took 8 hours and 22 minutes for me when I left my house to get there, and then from his back to BOQ where he's staying for me to get from there to here today. So I'm wore out.
I expect you to cancel. I said I wouldn't have been on here. I'd been sleeping. I go to sleep quick after a trip.
When I tell somebody I'll do something, I'm gonna do it. I don't,
That's good. All right. I
still apologize. I was still apologizing to DA last night after not being on show. He's like, dude, it's all right. That's just me, because I thought, I committed to DA to be one of his co-hosts, and I can't stand it when I can't live up to that.
Oh yeah, I love co-hosting and being a guest. That's what got me back into doing this thing serious. Oh, it's Rob Topless. Talk about infrasound. That's your infrasound guy if you want to talk about that stuff. All right, fellas. I really am going to wrap up this time because I got to go to the bathroom, not to break the fourth wall. I can't cut you off when you're in these good conversations, but it's critical at this point.
See, I've just got you into what DA calls an Ozark's good night. We talked about it about 20 minutes ago, saying we were going to start wrapping up.
Oh, yeah. Y'all don't hurry off. What y'all's hurry?
So
I'm shooting the deer in the head. That was ours.